Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com mailbag podcast presented by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control with Austin Price and Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. Hope everybody's Thursday is fantastic. Don't forget, hey, spring is coming and many East Tennesseans are looking forward to opening windows and letting in some fresh air. But what if you could comfortably change out that stale air year-round in your house without losing any of your energy efficiency? With an energy recovery ventilator, you can do just that. Indoor air pollutants can be up to 5 times higher than outdoors, making ventilation the most effective means for lowering indoor air pollutants. Call Blue Water Climate Control today to schedule a consultation, learn more about it. Give them a buzz at 865-299-2290. And again, Blue Water Climate Control, handling all of your repair needs. They've got the service plan, everything you need to keep your heating and air unit running at top shape. They can do that for you. Check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. All right, to the questions we go in this edition of the mailbag. And I don't think there's a Ty Simpson question in this week's mailbag, which is the first in about a year. And I don't think there's a question about who's going to be on the coaching staff for the first time in about 5 months. So let's see what is in the old mailbag as we open it up here. We'll start with a little recruiting question. Austin, where would you have Kinsey Paul and Patrick Kudus on the list of in-state players that Tennessee's looking at?
I think they like Kinsey Paul, but I think he's down the list. And Patrick Kudus is right near the top of the list when it comes to linemen. I mean, I put him right up there with Fisher Anderson and Addison Nichols. I mean, I think they really like Patrick Kudus a lot. And, credit Aaron Hayden, who told us last July or August, whatever, I forget what month we went out there on that state tour. And he goes, guys, you need to interview this guy. He's going to be the next big thing. And then, boom, boom, boom. Now, here's the thing about Kudus, Brent. He's not been anywhere because by the time he blew up, we were well into the dead period.
Right.
So he's not been anywhere, not seen a school. So I don't think that he's like hopping in the boat anytime soon or any of that, but I think Tennessee's doing a good job, and credit Glenn Ellerby for paying a lot of attention to Patrick Kudus.
Yeah, academics could be a major factor there as well. And just in our conversation with him there in Memphis, I think in Notre Dame, I think you mentioned Northwestern the other day. A couple of academic schools I think could grab his attention if they were good football schools as well. It's not to say Tennessee's academics are poor, but I think academics, is something that would be intriguing to him and his parents.
Well, I talked to him about that. And I think if Notre Dame offered, that would be an eye opener because he sees the history, tradition, and everything involved with the Fighting Irish, like the Northwesterns and Vanderbilts and teams like that. I think that might be a touch overblown. I think that, he wants a good. And again, I was under the same assumption, but having talked to him, I think that academics is important to him, but I don't think he's just going to pick an academic school just to pick one. I think he feels like he can get, his degree, which right now he's kind of going, either business or kinesiology. It's what he told me. I think he feels like he can get those just about anywhere. So I think it's important to him, but I don't think it's the end all be all.
Pretty good afternoon in the, I guess that was I don't know if that was the north or south end zone there at the high school. We got Kennedy Chandler, Patrick Kudus, and Dallin Hayden on about a 30-minute window of work there that day. So pretty good stuff that day. And again, Aaron Hayden called this shot a long time ago that he was going to be a big time deal. All right, to iHeart Vols we go here. You guys have been very insightful about how Heupel was willing to add Garner to his staff on the advice of others. Even though that Heupel and Garner have never coached together, some support staff members who know the landscape of the state, Lawson, Altizer, and others, were previous coaches advised to do the same? And if so, why do you think they didn't? A couple of things here for me. One, when previous guys were hired, the recruiting staff wasn't blown up. Rob, you didn't have an empty recruiting room to go about that. The other thing too is when other staffs were hired and other head coaches were hired, Rob, it wasn't, they had their staff kind of planned out how they were going to go about this. With Josh Heupel, it was, you get a phone call at 4 p.m. and the deal was done at 10 o'clock that night. So it wasn't like he had sat around for weeks assembling a staff to make a move somewhere. But yes, I think previous staffs were advised to, have some Tennessee flair in some certain areas and things like that, but everybody's going to do it their own way.
I think it's the biggest reason is the simplest when you mentioned first. I mean, the other No other coach came in here after 6 people had been fired in the recruiting office. I mean, it's unprecedented to say the least.
Well, I mean, you go back when you look at the last 2 coaching searches, like the last one had like the craziness of all that before Curry got fired, and then the kind of the second search with Phillip, and in this one you eviscerate everybody and obliterate the entire deal from top to bottom, low level people to the highest level. It just does it not feel like to you guys that like as we were sitting out there doing that live with Russo, and I got a call from a couple of different staff members telling me they were let go too. And it seems like it was 6 months ago, and it's only been like 6 weeks. I mean, like it just is crazy, like the kind of the depths the last 2 searches have been. So yeah, I mean, I do think that the fact that, and when we talked about this, the Rock Taylor thing was not necessarily on Josh Heupel, in my opinion, as much as it was just kind of a collaboration of all the events that happened. Because the previous staff, when Jeremy got here, Bob Welton was still here for several weeks to kind of help coordinate things before he went to Nebraska for 5 seconds before he ended up at Alabama. There was nobody here in the recruiting office.
And like
one student who was not really heavily involved at all. That was it.
And Altizer was here when Butch got here.
Yeah, and he was here when Kiffin got here, and so that they had some carryover there. I do know this: when Butch was hired, I think he was advised, and I think Dave Hart was a part of the advising of, hey, be careful how many Cincinnati people you bring with you. You may want to not bring everybody type deal. So it's been discussed. I know when Jeremy Pruitt in the interview with Philip Fulmer, I think he just basically told him, hey, here's what my staff will be. Because Austin, I mean, we were sitting at Fieldhouse Social, and in a matter of about 45 minutes, had like 7 staff, knew who 7 staff members were. I mean, that went really, really fast. That airplane was heading to Colorado to pick up Will Friend
and Terry Fair.
And it was going on out to get
Tyson
Helton and come back. And then Rocker was immediately hired. And so that one went really fast because Jeremy Pruitt knew exactly who he was putting together on that, for the most part, everybody who he was putting together on his.
And in reality, Brent, and I know this is the mailbag podcast, so we got to get to more questions. But in reality, like the offensive side outside of running backs was really done. Ellerby didn't show up because he had COVID. So like he wasn't here for a few weeks because he had quarantine. Yeah, whatever. He had to miss because of COVID reasoning. And then Cody Burns was sitting at home at Auburn, Alabama, and he didn't get up here because of the whole T. Martin situation, because they had to kind of meander their way through that. So like in reality, the offensive side was kind of done, except for the running back position. And then it was just the defensive side that, like, and again, I think that's because, as you said a minute ago, he could have called it 4:00 and it was quickly had to, the deal was done by 10, and he wasn't bringing Randy Shannon with him.
Right. Yeah, absolutely not. All right, let's go on to the next one. If the dead period ends tomorrow, who are the first handful of kids that get a phone call to set up some type of in-person visit? Whether they're coming to campus or whether you're going to see them. Of course, you can't go see them at this point, but if it's opened up, who's Tennessee trying the hardest to get to campus immediately? I would just say everybody in state.
Everybody in state and all quarterbacks. That's just, they're going to try to get, Jackson here, the kid from Ohio here. I mean, they're going to try to get every in-state kid here. The Wade twins, Fisher Anderson, Dallin Hayden, Isaiah Horton, Cam Miller. They're going to try to get all those kids here as quick as they can, and rightfully so. And trust me, those kids want to get to campuses, whether it's Tennessee or not. They're itching and really antsy and anxious to take some visits, because they don't want it to end up like the 21 class.
Yeah. All right. Can the 22 class get some momentum by a couple of commits or better than expected season? Because it seems like everybody in state is or not just everybody, but it seems like the 22 class is a huge uphill battle right now.
Well, it is. I mean, like, let's face it, take away Cody Jones and Taylor Groves. I mean, like, at the end of the day, most people that follow recruiting still don't know who those kids are, but everybody knows who Ty is. And so your top quarterback in the state of Tennessee goes elsewhere. And so he was the chance to really kind of light the match and light the fire. That didn't happen. So how do you do that? How do you get juice for Josh Heupel and company? Most of these kids are going to give, the staff a couple of months to try to show them what they got. Well, in that couple of months, you can't go to them and they can't come to you. So you got to figure out some kind of way to get some momentum. I think that's really hard. I really do. And like, let's face it, most of these kids, if not all, are not going to wait till Tennessee wins some games in the fall. They want to get stuff done. So, I think that Tennessee needs the dead period to end. They need it to end in a hurry. And that's just kind of where we are. In best case scenario, this thing ends May 31st, and Tennessee can start getting kids on campus in June.
Rob, regardless, for the time being, Tennessee's going to have to be creative to get some guys' attention. And I don't mean like circus, unicycles and crazy creative, but I'm just saying from a technology standpoint, whatever, they're going to have to be creative to try to get some guys' attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think more than being creative and being cool on Twitter or whatever, they're going to have to get some clarity with this NCAA situation.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't know how realistic that is, but yeah, the quicker they can get some kind of at least led down a path where they could give some guys more of a clear idea of things would be essential.
Because not only do they not have any answers, the people you're recruiting against have all kinds of ammunition to use against you.
Yeah, they think they have all the answers, and when they give kids stuff, and the kid comes and asks Tennessee's answer is, I don't really know yet. We're having to wait and see.
And let's face it, all those schools, guys, can do one thing. They can say, hey, you got to get in the boat now. You never know if your spot's going to be here if you wait a couple months. Well, what do kids fear? Being left out in the cold.
Yep.
And so kids are going to read, react, and jump, at things because schools put a little pressure on them. That happens all the time. Yeah. And sadly, with the fact that Tennessee has no momentum, and you can't, host kids or go see kids or kind of get, let kids get their hands on you a little bit. I think right now Tennessee's kind of in limbo.
All right, on to the next one. Will assistant coaches on the staff interact more with the media in an official capacity than the last staff did? Personally, hope Heupel lets fans hear from them regularly.
Yes.
It won't be any less.
Well, it can't be any less. But the fact that, both Chris and I were able to get Tim Banks and, Rodney Garner on The Nation the last 2 weeks, I'm told that Josh Heupel understands that, messaging and, getting his staff out there in front of people is a real positive. So I say yes. I think they're going to talk a lot more. I'm not saying they're going to be available every week, but they're going to talk more than the one time a year that they did under Jeremy.
And I think, Rob,
what about the days when Chief would just lean up against the wall in the Hall of Fame room?
Yeah, sometimes he wouldn't even get down the steps because people would be waiting on him in the landing area up there to talk to him. I mean, that's the amazing part. Those guys back then spoke every Tuesday.
And every single one of them, not selected.
Right. And you could get some of them coming off the practice field on days too if you needed to ask them a question. I do think, though, Rob, if you're Josh Heupel, it makes all the sense in the world, particularly you're in an uphill climb here, to let those guys' voices be heard, because I just think it helps you.
Yeah, in our limited interactions with him so far, he just seems to me like a guy who's comfortable in his own skin, is not a control freak, not afraid of, controlling the entirety of the message it gets out. I mean, I just think he's laid back and doesn't see it as some kind of huge threat to his authority.
Next one, when a coach ends up being a lifetime position coach like Rodney Garner, is it usually because of the coach's preference, or is it a lack of anyone giving the coach a shot at a higher position? I don't think in the case of Rodney Garner, he's ever pursued anything more than being a position coach and a recruiter. I don't think that's ever been in his desire list. I think he's been totally comfortable, totally happy. That's why you look at it, he's moved in a triangle, Auburn to Tennessee to Georgia, back to Auburn, now back to Tennessee. And I think he's totally comfortable with that role as a position coach and kind of a lead recruiter. Some other situations that, guys maybe had him a hard time getting a shot at a higher position, things haven't fell right for them. But in the case of Rodney Garner, it's just a situation where I don't think he's ever pursued any kind of job beyond being a position coach. In fact, when he was at Tennessee, he coached offense. He was an offensive line coach, coached tackles, and then went to defense. But he's always just kind of had a desire to be a position coach. All right.
I think guys like him are an exception, though. What do you think, App?
Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, like a guy like Jay, who's been a lifetime running backs coach, he was going to come 2 years ago, after Jeremy's first year, and then, kind of got caught up in language and titles and stuff. And Jimbo promised him to give him a title. And, he gave him that run game coordinator or whatever nonsense, but gave him really no more responsibility. So that's why he left a year ago to come up here, because he felt like he'd kind of gotten lied to. Well, when Alabama came about, let's face it, their running backs coach just got hired as the head coach at Marshall. So, like, you can go to Alabama and kind of parlay that into a head gig or a coordinator role. And so I think Jay's aspirations are just more than being a running backs coach. So I think in most instances, Rob's right. You guys want to continue to move up. Now, sometimes you get to a point in your career and you just kind of recognize this is what I am, and you're comfortable with it.
I'm talking about when they're young, when they're in 20s, early 30s. I think most guys are hoping they can grab the brass ring. And then, maybe when you get to be 45 and, you kind of see what's out there, where you're at, and the money you're making, it's probably pretty easy to be satisfied.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think particularly in this day and age, young guys, I mean, maybe years and years ago, I mean, I don't know that Dan Brooks ever wanted to do anything more, and, some other guys through the years you could name. But I think you're right. Younger coaches, and particularly in this day and age, I think they're all looking, for an opportunity to call plays or an opportunity to be a head coach somewhere. Certainly have a desire to move up and see if they can get a bigger piece of the pie, if you will. All right, on to PC Showtime. The athletic department's broke. Where's the money coming from to pay these buyouts and hire a new staff for a football program? Was the money donated? How do they do it? How do they come up with all this money? Here's what a couple of things. I don't know that there's direct donation money. There could be, but I don't know that there is. I know in talking to some people over the last year, because of all the COVID stuff, that the university was certainly going to be able to pay and fund whatever payroll stuff needed to be done if they were going to come up short there. That was understanding that they were going to be able to honor every contract, and that falls back on them. That's why the chancellor signs a contract, because it's more than just with the athletic department, it's with the university. So to pay contracts, that can default to the university if need be, and that would include the buyouts for Jim Chaney or whoever that way. There's also some talk out there, and I think this is probably going to happen in some places, that the SEC is going to offer low interest loans to athletic departments and universities if needed as a part of some COVID relief. Plus, Rob, you got a big old new TV deal coming down the pike, which is going to pay a lot more money from the SEC network and the affiliation with ABC and ESPN. Maybe that's where some of all the money's coming from. I will say this: it's an interesting look when you tell everybody for 2-3 years you're broke, you don't have any money, and then you're spending the amount of money that they're spending to get rid of people, to have them not work, and then to hire people. As you spent $6 million to Central Florida to hire 2 people. And
we had this exact same conversation the other day. I mean, I can't believe that there's some donors not involved, and I don't know what the operations look like, but I think there's some deep pocketed donors that have stepped up.
And we know that some donors have in the past. I mean, we know for Rick Barnes' contract that donors were involved there for the bonus structure in order to keep him from going to UCLA. That was something that was done with donors and Randy Boyd to make sure that took place where Rick Barnes was not leaving. That's how that bonus structure got written the way it got written, and some of the perks in that contract as well. All right, the next question here on transfers. Is Tennessee targeting Lance Dixon, Watts from Texas Tech, Caleb Oliver from Georgia Tech, Blaine Toll from Arkansas, or Ja'Cory Robinson from Cincinnati? Tennessee is targeting Lance Dixon. They've had a conversation there. I don't know how detailed the conversation is, but there has been some conversation there. He's got some other options out there: Michigan State, I think, TCU, Georgia Tech. But Austin, he knows Tim Banks, so you would think that would give Tennessee an in if he has a good relationship with Tim Banks. So that one makes the most sense. You keep hearing the Oliver kid's got some issues with Tennessee because of his older brother. It didn't go very well for him when he was at Tennessee. Tennessee was not involved with Oliver when he graduated high school from Murfreesboro. So I don't know that there's anything going on there. But what about Watts from Texas Tech or Blaine Toll from Arkansas?
I think they are at least looking at Watts at Texas Tech, and then Blaine Toll. I've not heard anything on him. Interesting that he leaves after 1 year, a COVID year, after he decided to stay in state and play for Sam Pittman.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that he didn't find a home, or they're saying he couldn't find a home over there at a position or whatever. I'll say this for Tennessee, Rob, if you're not in the transfer portal looking at transfers, and Josh Heupel, then I mean you got to have part of your back room in the recruiting office looking at every transfer name that hits the portal or that may be rumored to hit the portal. You better be evaluating all that tape to try to help this roster.
Well, I couldn't agree more, but there again, I mean, I think the NCAA stuff is a big impediment.
To me, like the main position you got to look at here: offensive line, secondary, and linebacker.
Yeah,
but more specifically, I think linebacker. I think you could get away with not taking an offensive lineman. To me, it's depth in the back end of your defense, whether it be linebacker or secondary. I think Tennessee, if they can get somebody of quality body, then they've got to look at them hard.
I mean, if you're a good enough prospect where you think you have a chance at the NFL, then maybe the opportunity to come and play in the ACC and get game tape against a bunch of other NFL picks is going to help your career. Then maybe that offsets the NCAA stuff, but I still think that's a big anchor around your neck.
Well, and here's the other thing too, from the NCAA standpoint. If you're Josh Heupel, you need to know what you're going to self-impose, because are you going to self-impose in penalties starting with the 22 class? Or are you going to try to back count some self-imposed penalty and maybe not use all of your spots for the 25 in the 21 class and say, hey, we've already self-imposed for that year. So you don't take and fill up your whole allotment of transfers to try to help yourself with self-imposed penalties with the NCAA. But to do that, you got to have a pretty clear idea of what you think you're going to need to self-impose. But maybe you don't go as heavy transfers simply for the fact that you're trying to get the NCAA stuff off the books as fast as you can. So why not count it against the 21 class instead of starting it against the 22 class if you're going to have multiple year scholarship reduction?
Well, Tennessee's sitting there with 5 or 6 spots. So, I mean, like you could still take conceivably, 2 to 3 guys and still be able to self-impose a few.
Yep, and that's what they may end up doing. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. All right, beyond tempo, how hard is Heupel's offense to prepare for? Can he scheme up a defense? Is the Heupel offensive statistics skewed due to piling on to bad teams? In 2016-17, Missouri scored over 30 points against a Power 5 opponent only 6 times. Tennessee was 2 of them. They scored 2 touchdowns or less 7 times. Are Tennessee fans setting themselves up for disappointment with this, quote, high-powered offense saving us? I don't know. Go ahead, Rob.
I just wouldn't say they're against bad teams, and just because he was at Central Florida, I mean, he's not. It's not like he's playing with a bunch of NFL draft picks against teams in that league that aren't. I mean, it's a level playing field. I mean, he's playing teams that are recruiting in the same target range that he is. So I don't think that they're skewed from that point. I mean, not over 3 years and not with those kinds of numbers.
I just don't think I don't think until they get out there and the live bullets start flying. But I mean, I tend to agree. Like Rob's right. Like it's not like Central Florida had set up some, I guess tricked up team where they were just so much better than everybody else. I mean, were they better? I mean, yeah, but I don't think it was. I think it was more marginally than it was anything else. So, I think that the proof will be in the pudding when they get out there and the ball gets kicked off in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously the case. Statistically, that their offense has been good everywhere everywhere they've been. Have they been perfect? No. Will there be growing pains with this offense? There's no doubt about that there will be growing pains with this offense, and there will be an adjustment to the SEC for this offense as well. I also agree with you, Austin, that you just don't know. I mean, I thought, and I've said this before, I told some people the night before Tennessee debuted the Dave Clawson offense at UCLA, I thought they put up a bunch of points. and that offense just didn't work.
I don't think I'd have told that. I don't think I'd have told that one ever.
Well, I mean, it didn't work, but here's the difference, and I'll finish the story in explaining this. It didn't work because not everybody bought in. Not everybody on the offensive staff was believing in it. They had obviously chemistry issues on that offense from a staff standpoint, from a player standpoint as well. This is an offensive staff that everybody has worked for Heupel except for the running backs coach.
The head coach is going to be bought into this offense.
Yeah, and so
Unlike that one.
Unlike that last head coach who was sitting there, midway through the second quarter going, what in the world is this? This is not what we thought we were getting. So, but my point is you never know. You don't really know till it gets out there. And, everybody thought that Jeremy Pruitt's defense would be, really good this past year because they're bringing all these people back, and it just wasn't. So you never know.
That's right. And Josh won't have a Nevin McKenzie to take one back to the house like Philip did at UCLA that night to keep him somewhat in the game.
Wow.
What a pull. What a pull.
That's pretty good because that's not as good as Richard Kovalchuk.
That right there is an all-timer right there.
I got multiple calls about Richard Kovalchuk's name being mentioned on the podcast. A lot of people had to go look who that, remind themselves of who that was, but I did some calls about that. Nevin McKenzie is a good pull. All right, let's go to little hoops here. No one thinks Barnes is a bad coach, but no one thought Fulmer was a bad coach either. Any chance that Barnes gets to a point that he may get pushed out, or did we not learn their lesson on that 13 years ago? With all these mid-range jumpers, has the game style of play passed Barnes up in any respect, Rob Lewis?
On the first one, I'd have a hard time seeing Rick get pushed out. I believe, based off what I've seen, and a 5-star in each of the last 3 recruiting classes, it could have gone anywhere in the country. I don't think the recruiting's passed him by, to say the least. To the second question, Rick is not. I've had other coaches tell me this, that he's got the mind of a young coach, and that he's interested in talking to people. He's interested in hearing other ideas, that kind of stuff. He's got his system and he's got things he wants to do, but he's not afraid to tweak it. Now, with that said, he's never going to sell out, I don't think, and adopt Nate Oates' philosophy of either a 3-ball or a layup. But he's got young guys on his staff, and I can promise you, and talking to him, that Kim English, Mike Schwartz, Des Oliver, these guys they're into the analytics. They can take a deep dive into the basketball nerd numbers with you. And Rick listens to those guys, leans on them hard to come up with game plans. So no, I wouldn't say that he's some dinosaur that is completely set in his ways and refuses to listen to new ideas.
All right, another basketball question here. Now that the regular season's almost done, who on this team do you see moving on to the NBA or just not coming back next season? And he wants to know if this so-called email list is real. Austin, I'll let you dive into the email list.
I would just say, if you know on the email list. That's all I'm saying.
If you know on the private email list.
All I'm saying.
About the 2 freshmen gone, Rob.
I think so. Pons is gone. Fulke tonight on his press conference, man, if people haven't listened to that, he talked forever in front of senior day. I would go back and I urge you to go and listen to maybe like the last 7-8 minutes of it. And if you're not rooting hard for the kid after listening to him, it kind of talk about what his struggles this year, what it's meant for him to be at Tennessee, then you're not a real Tennessee fan, because he gave one of the best player interviews I've seen anybody give in 20 years, especially just talking about the last, again, 7 or 8 minutes. So he seemed really open to coming back tonight. He stated flatly that being a grad transfer was not an option. He wouldn't play college basketball anywhere at Tennessee. And he said there was a lot that was attractive about coming back. I kind of left it thinking he was leaning that way. Again, mock drafts they don't mean anything, but the latest one I saw, Keon at 8, Jaden at 13th. And if that's even remotely close to being right.
Eurosh at 26. Yeah, figured.
I don't think they're gone. I think they're both gone. Yeah. And then I don't want to get into particulars, but there'll be some other kids on the roster that won't be here next year.
Why would Fulkerson not come back? Are you going to go overseas and eat that? Or are you going to stay around and go get a chipped ham every couple of days? Come on.
Well,
I think what you do. And to answer the other question, if you want to get put on the email list, email. The email to get on the email list
Is
is
austin.price at
AKA VFF at hotmail.com.
Let me go to the next question. I mean, as for Fulkerson, I think the question is, does he just want to keep playing? Where's he at in the game with his
I mean, I think
approach to the game
he
right
could
now?
go make some money in Europe, but he could do that next year too.
Yeah. All right. On to recruiting here. Last couple as we get out the door. Has Hypo had any contact with Arch Manning?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like they went out and they re-offered, like everybody does. And yeah, I mean, it's not something where Hypo can call Arch. Arch is not old enough for that. So, they have to set up a correspondence via direct message.
Yeah, I mentioned this on the board as well on Wednesday. The Manning family, in particular Cooper, knows Danny White pretty well. I think there's a pretty solid foundation for a relationship there. Not saying that will land Arch Manning, but it certainly it doesn't hurt with that relationship. I will be surprised if he ends up here, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, one, he's not Marshall, okay? He's not Peyton's kid. So like, and so like most anything that Arch has went to has been Ole Miss related.
Sure.
So like, if he's going to go and do the whole family thing, he's more likely to end up at Ole Miss playing for Lane than he is coming to Tennessee because Uncle Peyton went here,
Yeah.
So I mean, and we all know that also a lot of times, sometimes kids who come from, families that have a lineage at a school want to just carve their own path. I mean, he may end up at LSU or Alabama or who knows where.
Yeah. AP, speaking of Marshall, you got to read on that one yet?
Marshall?
David Cutcliffe said his mind is much like Peyton's, and throws a really good ball. I teed him up on the Nation a few weeks ago, and I was like, geez, he just like built this kid up. If you're a Vol fan and you heard him say that, you're like, I don't know what class Marshall Manning is. What is he like? 2028? Like, I bet you like Vol fans are sitting there like, 2028, just get here soon enough. It can still be the decade of the Vols.
All right, rapid fire out to date. If the dead period ends and Tennessee has a quarterback in the boat, will they still try to get Simpson or Horn to visit AP? If they have a quarterback done, will they be done, or would they entertain a visit from those guys?
No, I think they'd be done. Now, would they take a phone call if either one of those kids called? I think they would take the call, yes. But I don't think that Tennessee's not going to rock the boat here. If they like the quarterback they have in here, they're not going to rock the boat to flirt with a guy that may or may not come. And Sam Horn seemed pretty locked into Missouri. Now, again, that can change. A lot can change. And Ty Simpson seems pretty locked into Alabama. And again, the way the whole thing went down with Ty, he's going to have this, like I call it the stages of commitment. Right now he's going to have the anger stage because he's looking at his Twitter and all the Vol fans tell him he's terrible and he's overrated and they're cussing him and traitor and all that. Same thing happened to Cade, and that's what led to the Tennessee 2 video because he was angry, and so like, I'm not saying that Ty's going to do that, but I'm just saying like there's stages of commitment. So like a month or two from now, the dust is going to settle. We'll see what he feels about Tennessee at that point.
And final question out the gate, with Alabama making the announcement that they plan for 100% capacity for football in the fall, do you think Tennessee or other SEC schools will announce something similar in the coming weeks or months? I think every SEC school right now is planning on 100% capacity.
Except for Vanderbilt, and that's because they feel like it's an equal playing field to not have anybody there at their games.
But I think everybody's planning on that. I don't know that there'll be a bunch of formal announcements, but I think in any discussion, that an AD's quoted. I mean, the chancellor said on Vol calls that she expects campus to be 100% for the fall. Now, we'll see what the CDC says. We'll see what the state says. We'll see what all those things happen. But right now, there's nobody other than the Pac-12 who is planning on anything other than full football right now. And then the Pac-12.
In regards to that, and as it relates to the buyouts, beers are going to be $26.
No 2-for-1s in the second half, right? 26.50.
There'll be no cutoff time too. They'll just let you keep drinking.
They'll let you stay after the game.
Got to pay for buyout somehow. That's for sure. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Mailbag Podcast. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com or on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate. That's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag. Have a great Thursday, everybody.